If you're using a clear coating product which is based on either polyurethane or an acrylic polymer, and it doesn't matter whether it's water-based, solvent-based, or oil-based, if it's using one of those polymers, you have to scuff sand between coats in order to get each coat to bond properly. With a product like nitrocellulose lacquer, each coat, as it's sprayed onto the previous coat, melts the finish so that it becomes one homogeneous coat instead of, say, 10 to 15 extra coats. In the case of polyurethane and acrylic, however, those polymers lay on top of one another. They don't melt into each other. So to get an adequate bond, it's a good idea to lightly sand the surface, or as I like to say, abrade the surface so that it has a texture in which the next coat can bond to. However, a lot of folks run into trouble when they level or scuff sand between coats. They end up sanding through their clear coat that they just sprayed and into the underlying finish. So how do you avoid that, especially if you've only got one or two coats down? How can you scuff sand the surface without inadvertently sanding into the underlying finish? I don't use sandpaper. Instead, I use these Norton synthetic steel wool pads. And this is their green. This is a single-aught grade of abrasion, and you can also get it in double, triple, and quadruple-aught. The more zeros, the finer it is. But the single-aught works really well, and I can just simply rub the surface down to abrade it so that the next coat will bond adequately. Now, another issue you can run into is after you have abraded the surface and then sprayed your next coat, when that coat dries, you'll notice as you look at it in the light, you can still see some of those abrasion scratches coming up through the finish. So what do you do about that? Well, the best thing to do is just to continue on. Spray, let it dry, abrade it, spray, let it dry, abrade it, and continue on until you've applied about 10 coats of finish. After your 10th coat, and I'm just using these numbers as an example, it's really up to you how many coats you spray, and a lot of it depends on how confident you are with level sanding your finish before you buff it. Anyway, after you've applied about 10 coats, you would want to let it dry overnight. Give it a good 8 to 12 hours of dry time. Then you'll come back and you'll spray a coat without abrading the surface. You'll just spray it directly down. Wait about 45 minutes or however long it takes for it to dry to a touch, and then spray another coat. Do this a third time, and by then you should have completely filled in all those scratches and you'll have a nice clear finish. Then you can let it sit and let it fully cure, and that's going to take about a day per coat. So if you've put down 12 coats, that's going to be 12 days. But in all honesty, if you can let it sit longer, I would highly recommend it, because with acrylics and polyurethanes, even though they will dry to where you can buff them out after a couple weeks, they will tend to harden up even more if you let them sit longer. Now, I know what you're wondering. Why can't you spray all the coats, all 10 to 15 coats, the same way that you would the last 3 coats? In other words, spray it, let it dry for 30 to 45 minutes, and then spray the next one. Well, the problem is when you spray those first couple of coats, if you spray each one down 30 to 45 minutes apart, by the time you get up to a thick coating of 10 to 15 coats, those first couple of coats are going to take a long, long time to cure. And the reason is they need adequate time to kick off the initial curing process. And that can take a couple of hours. So what you do is you spray your first coat, let it dry for 2 to 3 hours. Then you come back with your synthetic steel wool, scuff it, and then spray your second coat. In total, you'll do probably no more than 3 coats a day, one in the morning, one at midday, and then one in the evening. and then let it sit overnight, and then continue the process the next day until you've got the 10 coats that you want. Then you would do those final 3 in rapid succession. And then what happens is once you have finished spraying the very last coat, you can hang it up and let it cure. That's the process that I use for scuffing between coats. So hope that helps you. Take care. We'll see you soon.